Good morning, Gretchen.
Good morning, JT.
Thank you. On behalf of the Center for the Advancement of Science Education, and also I'm responsible for project office of Ministry of Education. We call it SHS project, which means Society, Humanity, and the Science project. Okay, I'm very glad you can accept our invitation for this interview. Okay, so in the beginning, before we started, I'd like to have some souvenirs for you to show our great gratitude to you. Okay. Here. This is Center for the Advancement of Science Education case. Okay. Little things. For example, we got a scarf made from PET material, so it's a recycling, environmental benign product.
I could have used this a lot this week.
Well, today is almost spring, so yeah, you still can use it, I guess. We also make our logos into a coaster and some magnetic book clips. So I know you love reading.
I do.
So I would know you will use this. And just a little pet book for the SHS project. All right?
Which I will
Very little
also
things.
use because I write and read a lot.
All
write
right.
and draw a lot. Thank you.
I just leave it here.
Well, I have a couple things for you.
Oh,
too.
thank you.
In preparation for this exhibition, I made some cards of some of the pieces that are in the exhibition.
Oh, this is an excellent business. I think I got more than I give to you. This is very
so
beautiful.
there's the double bloodroot, the swamp azalea,
Yes.
the passion flower, and one more, and the Kai Halpert, and they're all in the show. And then a couple more individual ones of the swamp azalea because it's the azalea season.
Because of
the specialty of the azalea. And this, of course, is our New York native azalea.
Okay. Actually, a little bit variation different from our azaleas.
Yes, we have the cultivated azaleas like you do, which just are beginning to bloom in the spring. And this is an indigenous species that grows in the swamps out in the wild. And it blooms later in the summer.
Oh, okay.
And the flowers aren't as brilliant as they are in cultivated versions.
Also,
so it's
blooming.
special because it's native and grows
Oh, yeah.
wild.
Yeah. We also have some local native ones. Yeah. Okay, thank you very much. It's just very precious for me. Okay, I have some questions. First of all, we started from like your background. I know you started with science learning, education, but apparently, from what you said a few days ago, you also went to the not only just the art. I can see the institute. You studied scientific illustration for the graduate study. Mm-hmm. Eventually you made it as your profession. I think that's quite some change. Maybe not for you, but you might have some thinking, I don't know, even some struggling or whatever. Can you give us some background?
Yeah, there wasn't much struggle. I majored in botany in
Yes.
college and always liked to draw. Loved the portions in taxonomy class where you had to draw what you saw through the microscope. In all of our classes, we were encouraged to document through drawing of everything that we saw.
I mean, the instructors or professors, they encourage you to do that.
Yes. And in fact, in my zoology class, the instructor drew on the blackboard the entire time. While he was talking, he was magnificent at this, and he would just start with his piece of chalk. You never knew what it was going to be. And while he was speaking, he must have practiced this. he would draw an entire structure, an entire organ, and in my botany classes, particularly in taxonomy, we drew what we observed. We had to be very careful just to draw what we saw. It wasn't an artistic endeavor. It was with a hard pencil on a smooth piece of paper, so every line was a structure. And I loved that. A lot of students didn't.
That made me feel sorry. I dropped my painting in university's studies. Oh, keep going.
Yeah, so when I was thinking about what to do next, my plan was to do environmental research.
Oh, okay.
That's what I wanted to do. The state of affairs in the economy and in the government didn't favor environmental research at the time that I was graduating. So I went to graduate school for biological illustration. Someone had suggested to me, they know I like science, they know I like art, why not look at this program? So I moved to New Haven.
So you got encouragement from it?
So I got encouragement from a friend of the family.
Oh, okay.
Who taught at this university, University of New Haven. And so I enrolled in the program, and at the same time I needed a job, so I got a job at Yale University doing medical research because I had science background. So that started me in on the research, and the biological illustration program started me in on that field. And Yale University had an entire department of biological and medical illustration for the medical school.
Mm-hmm.
And they had a department that they had maybe half a dozen people working in that department. So it was a field that was well established.
Okay.
So I started it there, and then they started a program at the Rhode Island School of Design through their evening program, a certificate in scientific and technical illustration. So I moved to Providence to go to that program.
Right.
Got a job doing research again, doing medical research, spent 25 years doing medical research, but at the same time doing the illustration, and they never seemed separate to me. The art and the science were just two sides that I was combining. So
let maybe I have two questions related. One is the medical background got to be very different from the botany.
Yes.
But you did illustrations for both.
I did illustrations.
There got to be some difference.
It was. The medical job was different, but there were similarities in that I was working in the laboratory. So whether you're doing molecular biology or cell biology on plant cells or animal cells, even though they're different cells, the techniques are similar.
Okay.
And I was more interested in the techniques. Now, it's a lot different to be doing surgeries on small animals than it is on plants.
Okay.
And of course, the cells are different, but the techniques are the same.
So did you already decide the future profession when you were in the graduate school?
When I was
Combine
in
with
graduate
clinical
school, I thought, wouldn't it be wonderful if somebody would hire me to go hike in the woods, identify plants, and draw them. I want to find that person who would hire me to do that. So I had in my mind that I love to draw, I love being outside, I loved plants.
Yeah.
The medical research was a job.
Okay. It's more a job.
It was more of a job, but one that I enjoyed and where I developed research skills. And
so that reminds me, you mentioned you were part of the divided 3 areas, like in the field, in the lab, and also drawing in your career, maybe in your life. When did you decide that? That was later on, or in the graduate school, or when? And how did you decide?
It was less of a decision than something that seemed...
You moved into?
That I moved into. I never ever planned to be a molecular biologist. I never planned, I want to do medical research and I want to study prostate cancer or liver stem cells. That was another part of my research. And that was never in my planning stage. It was more, I'm going to move to Providence, Rhode Island because there's this program at RISD. RISD is what we call Rhode Island School of Design. Once I started working in the field, I also discovered that a lot of scientists are also artists.
Yeah.
So,
At least got some artistic mind.
Yes, yes, and some of them were visual artists, some of them were dancers, some were photographers, some were musicians, but most of the physicians and most of the researchers also had this component to their lives that was in the creative arts.
But most just keep it as a hobby, not as able to make a profession.
Right, most kept it as a hobby. And I did too for a while, because I was working full-time. But working full-time in the laboratory also afforded me to be able to do research and illustration jobs that I wanted to do.
Yeah.
So it took some of the stress out of trying to make my living as an artist.
Okay.
Or as an illustrator, because artists will make a definition between illustration and fine art. So that's another whole topic.
Illustration, that's a part of art. And I remember the first opening day when I was in your lecture, I mentioned one question. You're also an expert of microbiology, and I'm a chemist. To me, in the classroom, or telling micro world to the layman people, it's very difficult to me, I think. Like for the kids, for the beginners, or for general audience, molecular world difficult to be visualized, and you need to imagine. And without a real scientific concept, the illustration to me is totally beyond my understanding. Can you say something to that? Because last time I mentioned you didn't do too much micro world illustration, this kind of job. Right? But you show some artists to do
some
this.
Other artists, and there are artists who specialize in electron or
certainly make it, yes, make it visualize. That's important. Okay, so I think the scientific illustration also developing. It's developing into different features. Can you say something for that?
First, I can say that when I was a science major, especially in physiology classes and in chemistry classes, when I was having difficulty with pathways and those things that you need to memorize, it helped me learn to be able to visualize them. And I think that's the first step to a scientific illustrator who creates these illustrations to explain processes. While that's not my specialty, it helped me to be able to understand a pathway, that I would visualize it as in a three-dimensional way or in a drawing. The different molecules had different colors in my mind. So it may be the way an artistic mind works a little differently, except that I think anybody can do it. I think that there's no mystery to drawing. It's a learned skill, but some people find it easier to access visualizing something. I know, very commonly with patients who have autism, and they can see the numbers, if that's
into
their
patterns,
specialty, and they put the numbers
difficult
into
patterns.
So I think there's a little part of that way to access information. So for me, it's visual. When I look outside, I don't see things in terms of numbers, but when I look at numbers or pathways, I see them in terms of color and shape.
So that makes me think. Actually, the goal is to pass the message or the concept. That's important part for the scientific illustration, definitely. And right now, the brain science apparently getting into this linked with this area too. You said you mentioned about autism. People with autism probably see the world quite different from what we do. Is there any scientific illustration to get involved into this part in like Providence Institute?
Get involved into study the different ways.
Yeah, the brain works, because we don't understand that part that much. That's
not that
just like microscopic work.
I'm pretty confident that there is research that's done on that.
Okay.
But not that I'm familiar with or that I'm a part of.
Okay.
I think if we go online and look, that there is
When
most likely research.
I read the scientific Americans, is that right? As the magazine?
Scientific American.
Yeah, they draw something for the autism. Also like a mechanism of pathway.
Yeah, they probably would.
Okay. In the beginning.
Can I say that I think also that the scientific mind and the creative mind
Yes.
work very similarly.
You
And I
mentioned
mentioned
that.
this in my opening talk.
Yes.
That scientific illustrators and artists aren't as strange or different as many scientists may think, that the same skills of creativity and observation and diligence work the same, whether you're working in the laboratory or a mathematician or you're an artist, that creativity and observation skills are just as important. And the stereotype of artists as being
Frankenstein.
very flighty, and most artists I know, successful artists I know, and scientific illustrators in particular, are very methodical, and they go to work every day the same way that a scientist goes to work every day.
So next question, you mentioned one part of your job you enjoyed very much actually is research. When you try to do some drawing, you do spend a lot of time on that. So can you tell us something about this? Because I'm not very sure how different or the same with general artists or painters when they do their job.
Fine artists may do research, they'll do a different kind of research. More research on what they want to paint, on color, on form, and I do that too, and my fine art is a different process than my scientific illustration. The research I enjoy because I love learning about new things. It's probably the same with the science, it's the discovery. It's the learning and the discovery. So if I'm going to draw an animal in its habitat, I have to learn about the anatomy of the animal.
Right.
I have to learn about the habitat. I have to make sure that the fur or the feathers or the petals are in the correct stage of development as the season that I'm showing in the landscape. If there are insects as part of the birds or the flowers, they have to be the correct insects that are going to be feeding on that flower or that the bird is going to be feeding on. So there's a lot of research that goes into it. And I like the discovery. I like learning. This bird has this unusual type of mating behavior that no other bird has. And then I started noticing when I'm outside, I start noticing that these aren't just crows, these are the crows that are living on my land. Or they may think we're living, I'm living on their land. That it's a family, that there's a hierarchy. Mm-hmm. And before I did the research, I might think, oh, there's another crow, there's another sparrow. And now I'm more aware of their social network. So the research I find very exciting.
Right. And the research definitely provide you some insight, and you put more information into your drawing.
I'll put more information into my drawing, or I may not. It may be similar to a research paper or a term paper, mm-hmm. where you gather all the information, mm-hmm. and then you edit and you decide what you want to put into it.
Oh, okay.
It may be that I get overwhelmed with the amount of information, and then I learn, if I want to put this insect in, okay, now I've discovered that this is the correct insect that goes into the habitat. Now I have to learn the insect anatomy. And that's going to take more time than I have to do the drawing. And rather than have it incorrect, I admit it.
So you have to make a lot of judgments.
There's a lot of editing.
Yeah. So could it be possible then you turn out you draw more than one pictures mm-hmm. for specific theme or topic?
Yes, yes. And it depends too whether my illustration is a commission, whether it's for a job or whether it's for myself or for an exhibition. So that determines what I'm doing too.
Okay. We have some questions about I mentioned SHS project. Mm-hmm. That's one of the reasons I requested this interview. You are, to us, cross-domain professional. We are aiming at right now, we call transdisciplinary education and work in the university education or college education. So can you tell us something about what do you think about the cross-domain or we call transdisciplinary, the perspective to you as a professional? Say something to us.
In some ways, I don't consider myself cross-disciplinary because it seems so natural to me.
Right.
That in the society we've segmented ourselves
mm-hmm.
so much that there are people who specialize in plants, there are people who specialize in animals, the people who specialize in plants, there are those who specialize in fungi, there are especially those who specialize in angiosperms or in deciduous plants, and everybody has a specialty. And the same in illustration. A lot of the botanical artists, they only draw plants, they only use watercolor, they only use this particular kind of paper. I find that too limiting. And people often who go to medical school, they're on a single track, or engineering. They go to school, they know exactly what they're going to do. This is their end point, this is their goal. And they forget about everything else that's going on the side. And I find that the people who let music and art, and the artists who let science and math into their mind, you're more well-rounded, and it gives you more access to ideas.
Mm-hmm.
An example would be Steve Jobs has been in the news so much.
Right.
Well, if he wasn't interested in art and in calligraphy, we would be working with the same fonts on our computers.
Right.
Everybody would be. And you may consider that cross discipline, but everything ends up together. Now, there's been a lot of research showing that scientists who also do artwork, it opens different pathways in their brains, and you're able to learn more. There are double majors in math and music in particular. There's something about math and music. That studying music enables mathematicians to learn more easily. There's a program at Cornell University, which is near where I live, where every winter they do a program. They have a festival called Light in Winter, because winter is so dark and so long and so gray. And it focuses on combining science and art.
Okay.
So an example is there was this dance troupe that was one of the performances I went to that was working with a physicist. And the physicist was talking about inertia and gravity and Brownian movement, and the dancers were illustrating gravity, and then you start realizing, well, dancers have to be aware of physics. Artists have to be aware of chemistry and physics because they have to be aware of light. They have to be aware of what their art materials are made of. Or if they're not aware of what they're made of, they're aware of how they build, how they handle. So they're also scientists, even if they don't consider themselves scientists. And scientists are creative, and the quicker that a scientist can put an idea down on paper and do a quick sketch of it, the easier their ideas are going to translate. So they may not think of themselves as an artist, but they're sketching their ideas. And that history goes way back to all scientists and all artists, I think, have combined the two fields. We just haven't, we think of them as separate.
So that means you mentioned in the real world, our needs actually just cross boundary.
Yeah, I think
that's one thing.
Do.
And our natural thinking style should be cross-boundary because we use different competence. However, right now in the school education, we segment into disciplines. And that could be a problem, particularly right now. Our knowledge and information is so overwhelming, right? So what we are doing in the school could be fragmental, separated, or turned out to be gaps between disciplines.
Yeah.
That's also reality, right?
It is, and it's in the United States. I think it's different in different countries.
Okay.
But in the United States too, when you start school, when you get into junior high and high school, you're immediately channeled into college-bound or vocation-bound. Which means if you're college-bound, you take the courses that are going to get you into college, and you learn nothing about how to fix your car, or how to wire your house, or how to fix a thing. Whereas if you're vocation-bound, you learn a vocation that is going to get you a job as soon as you get out of school. But you don't need to take literature and the things that are going to enrich your life. So even there, the children get funneled. And I know in other countries, the program started very young. You're channeled into, you're going to be an engineer, you're going to be a mathematician. And it does narrows your focus.
So you think...
I think that there's room for introducing art. In my science education, as I told you, we drew.
Okay.
And drawing a specimen helps you learn it. So it wasn't seen as a waste of time. It wasn't seen as, we don't have time to do art. Now, I didn't have time to take any art classes in college because I was in laboratories. So studio time, laboratory time.
Right.
There wasn't time to do both. I didn't do any art education.
And you didn't have any anxiety about jobs back then? Or you do? You did?
Well, I thought I'd go into work in science and education. At that time, in the United States, if you wanted a job, you could get a job.
Okay.
The economy was such that whatever you wanted to do.
So how about right now? You think most students still keep the clear mind?
It's very difficult to get work right now. People graduating from college.
They think about their future jobs a lot.
Oh, yes. And we thought about our future jobs, too. But jobs were more available. Right now, it's very difficult for college graduates. People go on to graduate school right away because often people do because there aren't jobs coming right now.
Does that influence like scientific illustration institute get students more difficult?
In science illustration, the field has changed in that there are very few staff positions.
Okay.
It's one of the first things that gets cut out of a budget, is the artwork. So most of the scientific illustrators now are freelance. There are still staff positions, but they're difficult to get, and those who have them keep them until they die.
Yes, that's understandable.
They don't
right?
move in between. So it's a different field now, and so if somebody was interested in going into this field, a student, I would tell them that you have to be a business person as well as an artist, as well as an illustrator. That half of your job is being an entrepreneur. Half of your job is owning a small business. And so you have to be a business person.
Right. That reminds me another question. The marketing value can influence a lot nowadays to the students to put their effort to the future, like looking for jobs or to make money in our general thinking for the large market. Another thing is about the dedicated culture part. Sometimes we need some people dedicated into it, spend time on it. Sometimes we need long effort to make something special, like what you do. But I think some dedicated scientific illustration still very precious in part of culture. May not be exposed to general audience a lot, but for a small portion of intellectual or scientists or whatever, they still can appreciate this kind of work, and it's important particularly. How do you see these kind of things to balance the general value and some specific cultural innovation? I think we need both, right?
Yeah, I think we need both. I think it's a field that the general public's not aware of. And even scientists who use scientific illustrations often aren't aware of it. They're not aware that it's a field that they've grown up with illustrations in their biology books and in their anatomy books, but they haven't really thought about, oh, there's somebody doing those. They're just looking at them and, this explains this drawing. But often there's not an awareness that there are real life people out there drawing these things. What's more of your question? Of general awareness. I mean, I think, exhibits like this, and the interest that NTU is taking
Yes.
has probably broadened the awareness and interest in this field exponentially.
Mm-hmm.
So
that's just like President Lee mentioned in the opening. We are getting into these kind of events, such occasions, hopefully to raise more attention from the students and the faculty. Hopefully that can make more balance in between these two sides.
And it opens students' minds. I spoke with a number of students at the exhibit who walked around, and one of the reasons I put sketchbook pages in there was because I wanted to show that it's not such a mystery, that if you look at the finished artwork, it can be overwhelming. People may say, oh, well, I could never do that. That looks, but they look at the sketchbooks and say, oh, I could do that. That's not so difficult. And I met a few students who, after looking at the sketchbooks, said, I'm going to get a sketchbook. I'm going to do that. I like to sit outside and draw. And so they've been inspired, not only inspired, but realize that this is something they can do.
When you demonstrate some drawings, things, including the facility, like pens or whatever over there, I noticed some students, they had sparkling in their eyes. I know that you inspire some people. You probably also, personally or generally, meet some students in NTU, right? So what's your general impression to them, and do you have any advice to them?
Well, my general impression of them, I've been very impressed.
In which way?
In that they're interested, they're attentive, they're very respectful in that they listen, yes, and they ask questions. So that shows me that they're interested and that they're thinking about it. They try their hardest to, when you give an exercise, they get right in there and do it. And they don't, maybe personally they do, but my impression is they're not thinking, oh, well, I can't do this, or that I'm not going to be an illustrator, so why waste my time? They came to the classes, I'm interested in learning, and so I'll give it my all and see what I come up with. Everybody's been very friendly, very nice.
That's also typical Taiwanese.
Yes. I haven't spoken to a single student who had to take their earbuds out to listen to hear what I had to say.
Okay.
And they probably wouldn't even consider that, but I've been in many classes where that's the case. What advice I would give to them, if they're interested in drawing, if they're not interested in drawing, they shouldn't feel that this is something they need to do. But if they are and they're frustrated with their skills, I encourage people to draw 5 minutes a day, because everybody has 5 minutes a day. If you don't have 5 minutes a day, you have 2 minutes a day. The point is to get your pencil or your pen onto a piece of paper. It can be a napkin, it can be a scrap of paper, it can be anything. The point is to start engaging your brain into thinking that way of taking something three-dimensional and putting it down on paper. And I would encourage drawing from life, not copying a photograph. Because drawing from life is where you develop the skills of looking at something that's three-dimensional and translating it. And it doesn't matter what you draw. It doesn't matter if you're drawing a necktie, a chair, a pair of shoes, whatever captures your interest. And if you do that daily or regularly, it removes that stress of, okay, I have 3 hours on Sunday afternoon and I'm going to draw. And I have this piece of blank paper. And you stare at it and you want to make something good. And it's very intimidating. And putting that first mark down, it's scary. If you're just doodling, it takes the mystery out of it and the stress away from it. So that would be my suggestion to students. And then just to be looking. Look, if you don't have a pencil with you, you can have one in your mind. And you can look and think, oh, I can see those columns go straight up and down. Or I can see, I never noticed that before, but the floor, it goes at this angle, and I can just use my hand and see that it goes at this angle. So next time I draw it, I'm going to be aware of the angles and the perspectives.
So to make it into their lives.
Yeah.
Okay.
And wherever I am, I'm thinking that way.
Hopefully we will have a student club or an association, whatever, to involve into scientific illustration. That would be great.
Well, the medical school has the Greenfield group of
okay.
students who get together regularly and they paint. They do oil painting, they do different artwork, I think, weekly.
And hopefully that can make you visit us again in the future.
Yeah.
All right, thank you very much for your interview today. Okay.
Thank you.
I hope you will, the rest of the days you stay here, you will find more pleasure and
I'm hoping I find time to draw.
We'll probably keep you too busy. Yeah. And hope to see you again.
I hope to be here again. Thank you very
Thank
much.
you.